Welcome everyone to our Well at Work Stories of Success webinar. My name is Kathleen Lane and I'm the Executive Director of the EdCan Network. I'd like to begin by recognizing that we live and work on the traditional territories of the First Nations, the Métis, and the Inuit people. I am personally joining from the traditional and unceded territory of the Squamish Nation in Squamish, British Columbia. Please feel free to share your own land acknowledgement in the chat. Today's webinar is part of a series of webinars highlighting how schools and school districts across Canada are supporting the well-being of their staff and students. It's just one of the many ways that the EdCan is working towards our goal of fostering healthier workplaces to improve the outcomes for everyone in K-12 education, students and staff alike. In addition to the Stories of Success webinars, we offer Well at Work Advisors services, professional learning opportunities, a pan-Canadian community of practice, and an awareness-building platform that includes a variety of free resources available through our website. Joining me today for our first Stories of Success webinar of the 2024-2025 school year are Catherine Shearer, Superintendent, and Marcy VanKoughnett, Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources from School District 20, Kootenay-Columbia, located in British Columbia. Welcome, Catherine and Marcy. So I understand that Kootenay-Columbia School District has been prioritizing staff well-being for a few years now. As we start our conversation today, let's start at the beginning of your journey. What prompted you to focus on staff well-being, and what were your first actions?
Okay, well, I'll give it a go and start off. We noticed when we returned from the pandemic that everyone was impacted a little bit differently. And we wanted to see how we could support people, all of us and our students as well, in terms of moving forward after the pandemic. The unions, both CUPE and KCTU, which is our teachers union, and myself and our health and safety manager had been working together on really finding a way that we could improve our return to work action for people who'd been injured at work. And that work had started previously to that. And then as we started to work together a little bit more, it was like, okay, but what are we doing for the people who are injured, who are not injured at work and who are just having non-occupational illnesses, who are off work due to whatever reason it happened to be? How are we supporting them? And then Catherine, you might want to jump in with some of the things we've talked about as well.
In terms of the journey to begin this, I think in terms of the general sense of the district, we've been working very hard with our district leadership team on understanding components of compassionate systems leadership, and just that sense that caring, belonging, community, and connection are fundamental to everyone's well-being. So it kind of turned into just a nice dovetail with some of the things that were coming through the human resources lens, with things that we were looking at through the educational lens with our leadership team, and with things that we're doing with the mental health and school strategy for our students.
Amazing. So it sounds like there were a lot of potential directions. How did you determine which way to go?
Well, that's kind of interesting as well, because the committee that we were on, which included, as I said, the two unions, myself and health and safety manager, we were having that same question. Okay, we want to do something, but what do we do? And then, I don't know, within that week, I had an email forwarded to me from Catherine because we had been talking about it. And she said, oh, this looks interesting. And it was an email from EdCan around opportunities that EdCan can help to support looking at staff well-being. And so it was just that email looking at that Guarding Mind survey and what would that look like. So I reached out to EdCan to say, hey, this is what we're looking at doing. What do you think? And I think it was you, Kathleen, that I had the initial conversation with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then you wanted to go forward with the work.
We wanted to go forward with the work, and then we ended up doing the Guarding Mind survey, which was unknown to me at the time. And so the survey that was shared around how we could find out how people were doing, when I looked at it, it was like, this actually might work okay. And so then I brought it back to the committee. They agreed. We had some conversations with EdCan, with a Well at Work advisor, to see if this is the direction we wanted to go, because we wanted to make sure that we had the input of both unions and that they were okay that we were going to go down this path, because we needed them to say to their membership, yes, please fill out the survey,
Mhm.
because often you send surveys out and nobody completes it. And this Guarding Mind survey is not a quick 2-minute survey, like it is a bit lengthier. So we wanted to make sure that we had the support of the unions to make sure that they would encourage their members to complete the survey.
Mhm. And you mentioned in some of our earlier conversations, there was a little bit of apprehension at first because you didn't know what the results would tell you. So how did you work through that um, in these initial stages?
Well, I think that there was a bit of a leap of faith to say, okay, we're going to go forward and do this survey, but we all have to know that when we get the results, we actually have to listen and then do something with it,
Mhm.
regardless of what that comes out as. So I know we had conversations before that, wondering how it would come to be and what it would look like.
Yeah, and I don't think we weren't aware of the fact that we thought some of the results were going to be quite concerning, because society is looking a bit concerning. There already are data sets that are showing that there are concerns around people's mental well-being,
Mhm.
adults and youth. So we expected that,
Mm-hmm.
but it is always when you take that step. If you're going to do it, then we have to respond to what we hear.
Yeah, it
We
sounds
needed
like
to
you
be ready
had,
for that.
Yeah.
yeah, it sounds like you had that leadership commitment that it's like we want to know because we want to do something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think there was a piece too that helped in our journey of reframing that was because I know personally I was concerned, like, okay, what if it comes in and things don't look very well? Then I have this feeling of guilt on myself for my own work, and maybe I wasn't doing enough, et cetera, et cetera. Charlie, our Well at Work advisor, helped to reframe that and said, but at least you were doing something. At least you asked. How many people aren't asking? How many people aren't making an effort to try to make things better? And so that's actually been sitting with me this whole time, because there are times where the survey results came back and they kind of sit with you in a little bit of a pit of your stomach, because you think, well, we've done X, Y, and Z, but how come? And so we're really trying to dig into those results and make a difference for our staff and therefore our students, because we say it all the time, if our staff aren't doing well, then the likelihood of our students doing well is a little slimmer.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So once the survey was done, what came next?
So Charlie, well, we got the survey results back. We worked with Charlie as the Well at Work advisor. He then took those survey results. He had us provide him with a number of other different data sets. So things like our short-term leave data, long-term leave data, incidental sick data, those types of things, EFAP data. He took all of that and then created the report. And then when we got the report, at the end of June of 2023, we got that report. We had to do a lot of thinking and reflecting. And it felt in some ways going through the grieving process, because certainly there were some strengths that we had for sure. But as most people, you look at what didn't go well or what isn't going well. And I think that's just the nature of us as humans. And so it took that, well, only people that were upset filled in the survey. Like we went through all of those emotions. And then we had this kind of moment where we said, okay, well, 56% of our people filled out the survey. So if 56% of the people filled it out and were not happy, that's half our folks. So it's still not okay. So we had to, like, I personally had to get through some of that. And so it was good that it was through the summer. Then we worked with our leadership team, sharing the results with different, like the different groups, the different managers. And then we created a plan with Charlie where our whole wellness committee, so that's, as I said, myself and Catherine joined in this as well, the two unions, the health and safety manager. And we did site visits last fall. So we went to every single school, department, maintenance office, every single group of people,
Yeah.
and went through the results a little bit in more detail, but also to seek more feedback from them. Because the survey is anonymous, there's not an opportunity to fact check and kind of figure out a little bit deeper on pieces. So we were able to do that through our site visits, and Charlie did help us frame those meetings, and then we just repeated the same meeting in multiple places, which was a ton of time.
Mhm.
And time is precious, but I would do it all over again in a heartbeat, because it was worth the time for people to see us out in the field, as well as to connect on this topic.
Mhm.
Yeah, for me, I think the site visits were one of the most valuable parts of the process so far. Because when you have survey data, it tells you that you need to learn more, but
Yes.
it doesn't tell you enough. Like, you have to go out and get the story behind the question and the data that you're looking at. So being able to go out and having us uh, trying to set the dates that we could all attend together
Yeah.
probably created a well at work issue. um, but that we were all there.
Every single
I think
meeting.
that every school seeing us come to their site to listen to them in person, and however we managed to set it up, there was enough of a feeling of safety that people actually felt like they could express their concerns. And to
Amazing.
me, that was pretty telling, because if we didn't get that, we knew there were concerns. We had the data. And if they
Mhm.
weren't willing to share that, that would go back to that culture of trust.
Yeah.
But they did.
Yeah.
And we were able to hear directly from them and get a better sense of what do they mean when they say it's impacting their psychological health.
Yeah.
Mhm. So
Yeah.
what are, with all of that, you did survey work, you looked at other data you had, you did in-depth conversations with the staff across your whole school district. What did you do next? Because I know you've taken action on all of this.
Yeah. So then we took our site visits, took us till about Christmas of 2023.
Mhm.
And then in January, we reconvened that data. And so that qualitative data was sent to Charlie as well. We pulled it together and we made some short-term action plans just for the spring. Some worked. Some are, as best laid plans. Some didn't end up happening. One of the things that I think was successful, we have a wellness newsletter that we continued putting out monthly around some of the things that we're trying to do. We also began our custodial task force when the custodians were one of the groups that were, it came across that they had significant and serious concerns. I think it was in 12 of the 13 factors of psychological health and safety. So we started with them. We had created a task force with them where we looked at the specific issues that they brought forward, prioritized them. So I think we have 4 custodians on it, one from secondary, elementary, a casual, and there's actually 2 from elementary, and myself, the manager of custodial, and the union president. And we would meet, and I think we met 3 or 4 times last year, where we took the topics, we figured out what are the ones we want to address, and then Charlie had provided us with kind of a decision-making model of how to find our way through the specific issues. So, for example, one of the issues for our custodians was in the collective agreement, they work day shift on our professional development days. So Monday through Thursday, afternoon shift, all the way. And then Friday, they're supposed to come in at 8 a.m. And some of them were saying, like, that's a lot. Like, that's a lot of a turnaround for them. And can't they just stay their regular shift? Well, the response was always, well, that's what the collective agreement says, right? It says that. So that's a bargaining item. So when we sat down and talked about it, we really said, does it matter? Like, in some cases it does, because we need people there in the day as we are having events or things like that for Pro D. But generally speaking, those events are at our high schools and we already have daytime custodians there. So what can we do? So we sent a survey out to our custodians and who would want to work afternoon shift, who would want to stay day shift on those days. Got that information back. We created an understanding with the union that on a trial period, we would try this. If you want to work the day shift, you can work it. If you want to work the afternoon shift, you can do that. So that was just one small example of things that were kind of sitting with them as bugging them, but we were able to address. And so we'll continue with that task force through this school year as well. So those are just some of the short-term things that we did last year.
I think another piece that we did is we shared the survey results with the SD20 Board of Education. So all of our trustees were aware of the results. And then as part of the budget process for the upcoming 2024-2025 school year, there was a budget proposal put in for money to fund initiatives with a 3-year backing. So in a 3-year cycle. Part of that was based on how our budget was looking in terms of available funds. If we were going to get at any funds, we needed to look at one-time funding, but put it in a 3-year plan for use. And that was supported by the Board of Education. So that message coming from the board out to the staff that the board actually backed it with financial support.
Yeah.
Just shows that alignment moving across the entire system, and then provided our Well at Work committee with some money to work with in terms of putting a plan forward for the upcoming year.
Yeah, wonderful. So it sounds like you've had lots of deep engagement with the staff, taking action on the pieces you've heard. You have the commitment from leadership, not just the staff leadership, but your board of trustees. So what does the process for kind of that longer term planning over the next 3 years look like? And can you share any of the upcoming pieces?
Yeah. So we took the information from all of last year, and then our committee met as a group at the end of June to try to figure out what could we focus on, knowing that we had some money behind it now. What could we focus on moving forward from what we heard? So we had a great brainstorming day of where the hotspots were, and then Catherine and I subsequently met with Charlie and went through that document that we created and fine-tuned things a little bit in terms of, he just asked us the right questions to be able to get us to focus in on what it really was we were trying to get to. So we have a 24-25 action plan that then once that was created, we sent it back to the Wellness Committee. I just got final word this morning that everybody's happy with it to send out to the field for feedback. So we'll do that over the next couple of weeks, send it out, and as well figure out where those different things will be paid for, because both KCTU and CUPE seem to be interested in putting forward some money to support where they can. They don't have the kind of money that the board would have to put into it, but they want to certainly show that we're connected. But they need to go through their own processes to make sure that that's supported by their membership. So that's in progress as well. But some of the things that we heard when we were out was, we used to have this great social committee for the district. And with the pandemic, or even before that, it kind of fell apart. Actually, even before the pandemic, it really wasn't active. We should get that back, bring people together when they're not working. So we're looking at some things like that. We're looking at implementing using, I think it was Souk and the Chinook School Division, their weekdays till 6 email text communication, because we're finding that because it's so easy to communicate with people instantly, that we are all doing it in a way that is bleeding into people's personal time. So we're going to be putting, it's not a policy, it's more of an initiative. So we're looking to send that out and get feedback. So those things will happen in the next week or so to get that feedback. We'll continue with our custodial task force, continue on. We've got a couple of other task forces that maybe you want to speak to, Catherine.
Well, I think one of the other things we did is look at systems and structures that already exist within SD20 and look at how we can leverage those to support things that are related to Well at Work, rather than everything seeming like some new additional item. Because one of the things you'll hear is, I can't do more.
Yeah, well-being becoming just one more thing is something we've heard before.
Yeah, so there are different committees, like our Joint Curriculum Implementation Committee, that do work related to things that came up in Well at Work. Like one of them was kind of reviewing, what do curriculum and resources look like in 2024, and how has that impacted teacher workload when you're not just going in with textbooks with a teacher guide and kind of really more explicit direction around teaching. So we already have that committee, and that committee can take that on, and it fits within their terms of reference and the kind of work they do. So that was the other pieces, is looking at structures that are there and using them to
And
move, to move things forward.
yeah, and looking at their work with a well-being lens as well as, in this case, the curricular lens. I think you mentioned in some of our earlier conversations something around professional development. Would that fit into the work with one of the committees as well?
Absolutely. Because part of it is making sure that we have professional development that takes well at work concepts into account. And so we already have a committee that does that. To be honest, they already were doing things like that. We've definitely had a focus on wellness, but that just could ensure that we don't lose sight of it and make that explicit for the committee that should be kept in mind as they're doing planning for Pro D days, whether they're school-based or district.
Amazing. Is there anything else you'd like to add in terms of kind of where you are and what comes next?
I think one of the biggest pieces that will be new that I think I'm excited about, and it's still in the infancy stages of figuring out how to structure it, is another task force around inclusive education. And maybe we'll go between both of us to figure it out, because we're still, like I said, just trying to figure out how to work this one. But really the idea is taking and providing opportunity for people to come together, whether you're an education assistant, whether you're an Indigenous inclusion support employee, whether you are a student support services teacher, classroom teacher, principal, bring people together to talk about diversity in the classroom and what it looks like now, and what does each role look like, and how do we continue to work together, because we're so busy in the moment and in the day, we're finding that people don't have the time to connect and build understanding of what everybody's role is, but also then how do we make that work seamlessly? And so we're still figuring out how to basically structure that group. But that is we've got kind of a framework of it, and we'll send that out for feedback to see what people think. But I think that will be one that will be interesting to follow.
Mm-hmm. And another piece for the district that just ended up being a coincidence is that this year is our strategic plan renewal cycle. So it just worked out really well that we were able to incorporate staff wellness and staff feeling of connection and belonging alongside our student data on belonging and connection to adults and connection with peers. So I think that that's really going to just show that cross-structural alignment, that we're taking those concerns and actually embedding them into our strategic plan renewal process.
Yeah. And I would say one of the biggest things that has come to light during this whole process is the importance of having the leadership team on board with this work, in particular the superintendent, because Catherine works so closely with the board, but also in her conversations with the union and her conversations with staff, it's not far from the work and the wording that's used, because between the leadership team, we're always reminding people, well, how does that fit with well at work? What does that look like? And thinking about it. And I don't know that if we didn't have the support of the superintendent, and I don't just mean, yes, go forth, do it. I mean the active support. Not that Catherine has to lead it, but she's there when we have brainstorming sessions, when we come together as a group. And I do think that is critical, as well as the union leadership support.
Yeah, I feel like it was when the data came back.
Yeah.
Yes,
I walked into your office.
Yeah. Said, we think you need to actually sit on the committee.
Yeah.
And okay. Yeah. If that's where, because it was the kind of the so what now what had happened. Like the data's in, so what now what? And it was like, oh, I think you actually need to be on the committee at this point. And so that's the change that we did. And it's been great because it's really aligned with what should be a core piece of work for any superintendent, which is looking after staff well-being, because we know that it's directly correlated to student well-being.
Yeah. And I can't say enough too about the support of Charlie as an advisor, because I do think that we would have got lost in our steps. And he's the one, he'll send the email to me and say, hey, should we have a meeting next week? It's like, yes, we should have a meeting next week to just keep us on track, because it is easy in the day-to-day busyness of our jobs
Mhm.
for it to fall down, and it can't. And so I do think with all of those pieces, we're all reminding each other that this needs to stay at the forefront of the work that we do.
Amazing. It sounds like you're making excellent progress.
Well, baby steps, I'd
Yeah.
say.
It is an ongoing journey. There is no arriving at the destination of
Right,
it's all done. There's nothing more we can do. Like
right.
well-being is something that we are all individually and collectively working towards. Um,
Mhm.
so thank you so much for sharing your story today, Marcy and Catherine. It's been a
Thank you.
pleasure to have you. And best of luck as you continue the journey. I believe you're working alongside Charlie for this year as well.
Yeah.
So I look forward to ongoing progress reports over the next few months.
Okay. Thank you so
Yeah.
much, Kathleen. Thanks for
Thank
your
you.
help and support as well.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Take care.